Actually running it, is it? I think so.
Welcome to your awakening. Please take form as your reality is adjusted.
Please hurry up and swig your coffee and put your headphones back on so that you can click buttons and make stuff happen. It seems to be a new, well, certainly not new, because it seems to have become habitual to introduce the show with some random commentary about how I'm clicking buttons and starting the show. Good evening, welcome back again, folks. Greetings and well met. Did I click the right button? I hope so. It looks like it did. Yes, I can see the screen moving. Hello to everyone in the chat. Hopefully let me know if you can't hear the audio, if there's any malfunctions going on while I do my clicky lot of buttons multitasking thing to get everything set up going. Yes, this is amateur hour, or 2 hours approximately, of me clicking mice, clicking mices, clickety click the mice, get screens open. I was trying to wait for as long as possible for the Raconteur News guys to finish up with their broadcast, but they were still going, and I thought I didn't want to wait any longer, so I started setting up the screen ready to go. Just quickly scrolling down the chat room. Hello. Greer Louise, hello. Thank you for your comments in the chat on Raconteur News just a minute ago. You put in some intelligent commentary in there, questioning what was going on. I'm sure we'll get into talking about more stuff connected to that in a bit, because some of the stuff I want to say tonight, strangely, coincidentally, synchronistically, seems to line up with some of the things such as that that we've been seeing going on recently. Anyway, yeah, being cryptic again. Dots, hello, Dots. Non-violent extremist, hello. Paula B, good evening, hello. I'm glad you made it in here, over here as well. Dave Iron, hello. I'm scrolling down. Dino, hello, mate. And Krishna, hello. And Stewie, hello. Coolio, right. I haven't shared it round, have I? My God. Just getting more and more professional as the weeks go by. I've only got Google Plus to share it on anymore, and that's soon going to be going away. It's worth me segue mentioning that. Please don't forget that the Google Plus system is soon going to be over and defunct. The message keeps telling me April the 2nd, but yeah, it might end up getting deleted before then. I'll still keep sharing things to that group page, the Heads Up Hangouts group page, and sharing it to public for now until they finally make it defunct. If you like what we're doing here, like what I'm doing with this particular thing, please share it round wherever you want to, wherever you feel appropriate. I'm not on the majority of different platforms out there. Hairy Cookie Monster is not on Facebook. Hairy Cookie Monster is not on Twitter. Well, I've got accounts on most of the other platforms, simply because years ago when those platforms started up, I did have accounts on them, or I made up an account on those platforms just so that I had the name there ready if I wanted to make any use of them. But most of them I never do anything with. Like the Twitter page, I do have a Twitter account, I think, if it still exists, if they haven't shut it down, because I haven't done anything with it since 2012, I think, something like that. And I've got a Steemit account, so I have got a blockchain crypto connected account, but I ain't done much with it. I've just kept it there ready in case I need it, so that if anything happens with this channel, I've got other platforms I can move to or make use of. And, you know, can always make up new channels, and new platforms are starting up all the time. So, Ron Malcolm, hello, mate. Glad you made it. And Lotsum, hello. Sui Generous, hello, hello. I am Sui Generous. And Super Leads, hello. Yeah, I'm not sure if Raconteur News has finished yet. If somebody lets me know in the chat, because I was gonna send an invite to Jason as well. If he wanted to join in, he's welcome again. Like I said before, and send invites. So I know I'm just like blathering at the moment while I'm multitasking. I will get in and onto things in a minute. I'm just trying to do all these multitasking things, get this done out the way first before we carry on. We'll send invites out to you and you and you and you and you. So today's date, what's the start date? The 11th of the 2nd, 2019. I was just commenting to the other guys when we were chatting just before I clicked the start button that it seems to be quite an energetic week this week. And then while listening to Raconteur News and the guest, it seems like there was a lot of energy going on in there as well, which seems synchronistically connected to some of the stuff I wanted to mention tonight. I'll try sending an invite to Jeff as well, but I know he's not often online at this time, but this time of the day here in the UK, because he's over in Kanukistan. But we shall see. Where Jason, where you gone? I can't see you in Middle East. Oh, there it is. Yeah, we'll see if he can make it or not, if he turns up. But yeah, it's been a lot of energy at the moment pushing round. And that is part and parcel of what I wanted to talk about. In the subtitle, it says Scales of the Dragon. Doing my usual of being a little bit cryptic, a little bit poetic, and messing with my use of language to imply different meanings, to be a bit subtle, not deceptive, but utilizing the English language in a way where you can imply multiple meanings, not just with individual words, but with an entire sentence. It can mean something completely different. Depends on inflection and intention. But anyway, I'll just check my notes to remind myself where I was going. Right, okay. Yeah. It is the 11th of the 2nd of February. Not far away till Brexit, not too far away. It's almost Christmas. I saw somebody post that in the chat earlier. It's like, oh, we ain't even into February properly yet. You already had to make Christmas again. Classic. But yes, it's the chaos is accelerating here in the UK, and there's lots of propaganda rhetoric and manipulation going on in the media, and there's the theatre game in the politics going backwards and forwards. And are you enjoying all the matrix, you know, the maze trickery, maze tricks? She's a good illusionist. You know, just wait until you see her with her red shoes on again, and then you'll know something important's about to happen. I've been watching, but I haven't seen that many news clips where they actually show a full length image so you can see what shoes she's wearing. But and it is just a bit of a shoe fetish, not in a sexual fetish kind of way, but I'm keeping an eye out for that kind of indication. Like when she wears a slave necklace, she's usually talking certain rhetoric whenever she wears that slave necklace, you know, stuff like that. It's interesting and sometimes surprising how people's inner selves can be revealed through the way they present themselves. Am I a lumberjack? Am I really a lumberjack? No. I just like warm, comfy clothing. Yeah. Something I learned when studying palmistry many years ago, and other forms of divination, whatever that I was interested in at the time, but learning about palmistry and the connections to astrology and the different elements of the hand and the references to the different energies that are supposedly flowing through each finger and stuff like that. But part of what you learn about that is how people utilize jewelry and adornment, which includes clothing, hairstyling, stuff like that, tattooing, how people utilize adornment to express their inner selves. Often people think they're doing it consciously, like somebody, oh, I like that particular ring, I want to wear that ring says something about me. But if you learn a little bit about psychology, you can often find that it says more than what they think it says, or they will have an idea in their conscious personality of what they think it says, but what it actually more likely represents is something different, or a variation on what they think it is, or even possibly a complete opposite. They think, oh, this ring makes me look like I'm powerful, whereas it says the opposite. Actually represents a blockage in your energy flow that you are trying to alleviate or even accentuate, like a nexus point that you're trying to exaggerate the energy that's coming from that particular energy flow, which connects back through to your chakras, etc. So if you want to put out certain kinds of energy, you use certain kinds of adornments in certain places on the body to express that. Most people are not consciously aware of that stuff. That seems like a real tangent to the scales of the dragon. But I'm referencing the subconscious, the not consciously aware of motivations and intentions that are true for all of us. Everybody has, that level of the instinctual that bubbles away underneath the smaller codification that is the conscious monologue of intention. Like, I want to do this today, but you've got all this other stuff bubbling away in the background as well. And most of it is what is referred to normally as subconscious. You're not actually aware of it. It's just feelings, gut instinct, sensations that encourage you or even possibly persuade you. You might be ending up doing things that you don't really enjoy that much or are detrimental to you just because you've got these urges, fetish. But yeah, they're less aware thought processes and intentions that go on in all of us, and extrapolate that out to the group mind, because we are all part of one group mind or another. The majority of us are part of multiple group minds all at once. Your social group, your peer group, your chosen lifestyle groupings, the various demographics that you fall under, the cultural indoctrinations that we all pick up based in the society that we grow up in or are inculcated in, that we are in for such a length of time that we absorb their culture, all that kind of stuff, applicable to the group mind just as much as the individual mind. So again, what's that got to do with dragons and the scales on dragons and any of that kind of shit? I'm sure many of you are aware of what's been going on over the last several weeks, and over the recent week, there's been pretty much the same as what there has been for a few weeks now. Certainly here in the UK, like I mentioned earlier, we've got a constant churn of everything's chaotic, the chaos, Brexit is coming, it's like the end of the road and there's no bridge and we're all just going to fly off in the bus and the bus will crash off the cliff. Brexit, oh. Yeah, and in other places in the world, somewhat similar rhetoric, just with slightly different styles. And I mentioned this recently, the various protests that are going on all over the place, and protesting that has got to the stage of potentially being a revolution or uprising of some kind, or it is being portrayed in that fashion deliberately to serve certain agendas. And that makes a really good connection for me to point back at Scales of the Dragon. What you on about? Referencing that subtle bubbling of the group conscious minds or groups. It's pluralized because there's not just a singular. It's subdivided into loads of separations, just like we subdivide ourselves into demographics. I like wearing these kind of shirts. Other people like different kind of shirts. That puts us in different categories of shirt wearing. But those different group minds are bubbling away over similar narratives that are serving certain agendas that seem to be all correlating around now. And the dragon is the fantastical, the non-existent, the metaphorical encapsulation of the steering of that energy, or the attempt to steer that energy. You know, many people have often referred to the system as a hydra. You know, I know classically, in a biblical sense, it's referred to as a hydra. But looking at it in that subdivided classification sense, there's a different agenda for various topics. There's different rhetoric to go with each of those topics. There's different narratives that may seem on the surface to be separate threads, but they all coming from the same roots. Like leaves on a tree, they're all connected back to the same root, the body of the hydra. So trying to perceive them as following a singular intention is difficult, but there is an emanation of that group consciousness that is naturally revealed just in the day-to-day activities of people. You just got to watch people and see the way they interact on a day-to-day level and on a weekly level, on a monthly basis. In about a month or so, month and a half, 6 weeks-ish, we're supposedly going to be getting to that Brexit point. And you can see how that has affected, or is affecting, people's day-to-day lives by the very fact that a lot of them talk about it incessantly. And some are even actively taking action in relation to that forthcoming event, potential forthcoming event. We'll see. We've got a few weeks yet. Yeah. So a lot of things could change in those few weeks. But so that emanation reveals the body, maybe not literally, physically revealing our body, but metaphorically it encapsulates that energy, thereby defining, metaphorically defining a body shape. The hydra, the dragon, might have multiple heads that represent different narratives, like the Brexit narrative, like the LGBTQ, the gender political narratives, like the black versus white divide narrative. There's a laundry list that you could easily, trot out. The point being, look behind the root of that to start to see the body, and that body is often revealed in the patternation of the activity of the society that you're looking at. And when it's a global structure we're talking about, you're looking at global society as a entity, a singular entity. I am anyway. Maybe I shouldn't say you. That's the way I look at it. So if that's representing the dragon, or the body of the dragon, the hydra, to me the word dragon and hydra interchangeable. They represent that mythical beast, the thing that is like the chaos of the dark night that we all have the deepest fears of, because it's about survival and stuff like that. Yeah? It's just a way of talking about that kind of stuff in a metaphorical sense. So the body of the dragon, and supposedly this dragon is covered in scales. You think of the classic mythology of dragons. There is psychological implications in the various symbolic elements of all that kind of imagery. I've spoken many times about the use of symbolic language and metaphorical language. So same thing is applicable here. Yeah. When people talk about the dragon, when I talk about the dragon, it's a metaphorical thing, but there's a lot of layers and subtext and connotation to that imagery that is brought brought along with just the mention of that imagery. You use that metaphor, you're adding in all these other possible connotations. But supposedly this beast, this Hydra dragon thing, is covered in scales that make it supposedly impossible for you to deal the dragon a killing blow, because the scales on the dragon will turn away any blade, any spear point. Nothing is sharp enough to get through those scales or get in between them and stuff like that. I know this all sounds a bit sort of, out there, tangential. What's this got to do with Brexit and all the shit going on at the moment? But in the way that I do, I'm trying to think of ways of presenting ideas and concepts and perspectives on what is going on at the moment that will be helpful to seeing through a lot of the bullshit and the manipulation, so that hopefully less people get caught up in that bullshit and manipulation and thereby get exploited or used by the system to serve the very agendas that people are trying to deal with or alleviate or cure, heal, fix. People have loads of solutions, but if the system keeps stomping on you with its big boots, all the solutions in the world aren't going to change anything, because they just keep coming along and smashing it up. You build a lovely self-sustaining community where everybody's getting on with each other great, and all the things are going lovely, and maybe it's not quite a hippie utopia, but it's certainly a trillion times better than the bullshit system. And the system comes along and goes, "Oi, you ain't paying us our dues, mate." It's like the mafia. And if you don't kowtow and sublimate yourself into their control, they'll stomp on you. Join the empire or die. That empire has grown systematically until it's now at this reach that is global, so that it can formulate a global structure again. Yes, anyway, digressing myself again already. So watching some of the events over the week and over the weekend, if you're not aware, there was another big yellow vest protest in France. A lot of the main stuff going on was in Paris. There was a fair amount of coverage of that. I was going to say riot, but it wasn't a riot, was it? The protesters, the march, the gathering of people there who felt aligned to the yellow vest cause or idea. And at the same time, there's some people there, set out to do violence and destruction and blah, blah, blah. And we could talk endlessly about, the agent provocateurs and the instigation and the deliberate destruction of infrastructure so that they can build the new version in its place, etc., etc., etc. But I'm more interested in the fact that it wasn't just in Paris. There was also similar marches in other cities in France, Nantes and Lyons. I'm not sure you pronounce Nantes. Do you pronounce the T? I can't remember. In Lyon as well, and there was some of the other places that may not have been covered by the mainstream news, but there was other stuff going on as well. And it wasn't just in France. There was meetups in other countries as well. So other people in other countries, other nation states, other parts of the world are all cottoning on to this same idea, the yellow vest movement, etc. And the energy that is there, as I mentioned earlier, that energy of what people do is an emanation of the influences that they feel. Some of those could have been self-generated. They, by their own free will, aware choice, they're deciding to send their energy in certain directions. But a lot of it could also be influenced by outside forces, groups, individuals, political parties, whatever. There's plenty of stuff out there to influence you. Part of what happened over the weekend was one protester, one marcher, one yellow vest, lost near enough the whole of his right hand, almost entire right hand. If you saw the footage, it was pretty extreme. And it turned out that he was trying to throw aside or get rid of a pellet grenade which have been thrown by the gendarmes, the police. I'm starting to wonder if a lot of them are genuine police or whether they're other military forces that have been given an armband and just told to follow orders and go and do that. Some of the tactics and the way they're implementing them are very antagonistic, deliberately antagonistic. And I know it might sound a bit like stating the obvious, but it seems very much like they're just being deliberately heavy-handed to create, to fuel this narrative of the violent protesters and all that kind of stuff, which is a tactic they've used multiple times, again and again and again. So, it does become a bit like stating the obvious. But this guy lost most of his hand because of this pellet grenade. And I'm sat here thinking, why are they even using pellet grenades? That's so. Is this talking about dispersing a riotous crowd? Or is this talking about urban pacification within a occupied zone? What does that remind me of? Where else on the planet at the moment have we got this practice of constant urban pacification within a militarily controlled zone? Oh yeah, it begins with an I, and it's in the Middle East, and it seems to be, reaching its tentacles out all over the place. And as I've pointed out many times over the past few years, the UK police forces are sent over there and trained in those very same tactics, where they will aim baton round guns, which are what people know as plastic bullets, baton rounds. They'll aim it at people's heads. Yet the international laws and rulings on this kind of stuff is supposed to be, you don't do that because that potentially could cause death and severe injury. So if all you're trying to do is disperse a riotous crowd or an unruly crowd, but you don't aim shit like that at their heads. That's an intimidation tactic. That's a terror tactic. Cause severe injury so that you terrorize other people to make them not want to come out and get involved in this thing that's going on. So why are they even using things like pellet grenades? What the hell is that? Is this urban warfare, or is this a bunch of people turning up to express their dissatisfaction with the current governance and what's going on in their country, in their society, and asking, even that is a protest. You're begging the rulers to change what they're doing, and yet it warrants them using equipment that is battlefield equipment. Shouldn't really be used in that kind of urban setting to disperse people that are supposedly citizens of the very society that they empower by giving their consent to those people who are throwing the grenades. That is just insanity that, I can't even begin to try and get my head around it, because as soon as you start trying to get around that idea, you just end up in this spiral, twisty shit of just non-logic. So this poor guy's lost most of his hand. They might be able to give him a prosthetic and stuff like that, but the injury was extreme. His hand was basically shredded. So, it's not like they've got a lot to work with. And the result of that is, he was in a situation where something landed near to him, and for possibly, I'm presuming a little bit here, but I'm trying to empathize, put myself in a similar situation. What went through his head was just like, get it away from me. And in doing that action of trying to protect himself, he suffers those kind of consequences. And why was that item even needed to be used in the first place, etc., etc.? All these questions about what the hell is going on here with this situation, and why is it that people are just sat back and looking at it and thinking, these blooming hippies and protesters and anarchists and leftists and rightists, and it's all the neo-Nazi people, and it's all the Antifa people, it's all the SJW. It's funny that, isn't it? One side always blames the other side. And everybody sat here just watching them like fucking ping pong, fighting each other and causing all this shit. And then if you happen to get caught up in that stuff, you potentially suffer these kind of consequences. And I know this is going to sound really strange, but it made sense to me. It still makes sense to me, but I know it's going to sound really weird to people, maybe even a little bit offensive in a way, but whatever. I'm not saying this to be degrading or degrading the situation that occurred to that guy. But the one thought that kept going through my head was, for those of you who might have seen the movie Dune, the film version of the Frank Herbert series of books. But one of the main points in the books is, the main character, the hero, is meant to be in a state of almost hypnosis or unknowing nescience. And they keep implying to him, you got to awaken. The sleeper must awaken, was what his dad kept telling him. He's like, you are the special one. You need to awaken to your own power and all that kind of stuff. And in the movie, they epitomise that with the little subtle scenes of the opening hand with the third eye in the middle of it, the eye of illumination, all that kind of stuff. And there's some interesting correlations in mythology and whatever with that symbolism. But my point being, the hand opening, the sleeper must awaken, I think was the phrase, as far as I remember in the movie. And it just made me think that guy was there. He was trying to open his third eye. He was trying to see a bigger picture of what's being done to his society, to his culture, to his world. And the response from the system to that is to blow that eye away, to blow that hand off. And it was all that kept going through my head was a sleeper must jazz hands. Yeah. There is no sleeper must awaken. There's a sleeper must jazz hands because of all the grenades going off. You see people running away from the battlefield going, ah! That is the level we've got to at the moment, where these kind of protests are going on all over the place. Venezuela is on the verge of a coup. Not a natural coup. This is something that's been engineered by outside forces. Who else said that? Oh, Gaddafi, Saddam, the Shah of Iran. They've been engineered by outside forces. I wonder, these big geopolitical game players, the bigger boys gobbling up the smaller boys and balkanizing those areas and handing the rulership out to chancellors and other followers of orders, puppets, flesh golems. So, to try and explain back to the scales of the dragon, to explain that larger body of the root of the intention that some in the world are trying to steer the public's energy. There is this public energy that en masse creates this large well, full of energy that can be steered to direct the construction of society that is going to be here tomorrow. The next day and the next day and the next day. The people who are putting bricks on bricks are building the world of tomorrow. And that's all of us every day with the actions that we do within the societies we live in. So that big well of energy can be tapped into and steered. That's mostly what the beast does. The Hydra, the dragon, acts as a friction point to drive the energy in certain directions. If you're presented with a dangerous beastie, most people go the other way. So if the system wants you to go a certain direction, they present you with a big beastie and you go, oh, big beastie, I'm going that way. And all I need to do is keep presenting you with different beasties, one side and the other, and your energy will move that direction that they want. So this emanation of the public's energy, of the global consciousness, I often refer to it as the global consciousness, even though most of the time it's a subconscious level. Most people are not aware of this stuff. They're not looking for it. They're not watching it happen. But thanks to the internet and the global reach of information, you can now do that if you choose to put the effort in. You can look at multiple sources of information such that you can get a bigger picture, a holistic picture of a global situation and the movement of energy on that global stage. In doing so, you see the patterns and you see the points where people are being steered. Like 9/11 was a big steerage point. That was a major locus to direct the energy in a certain direction for the coming possibly century, according to the protagonists. But we'll see if they get away with that. So this energy of the dragon is protected, or the appropriation of the energy that the dragon sucks up from the public is protected by those scales. You can't get that beast down. You can't pop its bubble because you can't break through that barrier of the scales of it. But scale has got more than one meaning. It doesn't just mean the keratin. I think it's keratin based, like on the pangolin. Synchronistic connection there to the mention of the pangolin not so long ago. Keratin based, which means basically the same as like hair material, like a rhino's horn, or stuff like that. It's not the same sort of thick skin like the rhino's skin or an elephant hide. This is something that actually forms a scale that's meant to be a defensive plate against the environment around it. Those scales, in another meaning of the use of the word, can be the balancing scales. The classic image of the Lady of Justice, supposed blind lady of balance with her scales representing balance of, the left and right, or just that dualism of the balance of the two sides, the Gog and Magog. And it can also represent a size, as in a scale, as a measurement. So, you talk about something being on a massive scale. And that's more the implication I'm after, even though the other two do also add into this metaphor. They are multiple layers of the metaphor of meaning, but the reference or the definition of the word scales as a measurement, something that represents a certain size of what it is you're referring to. So on this global consciousness, the scale of the things that are going on, many of the things that are going on, there's different scales. Some things are big, some things are small, some things are little infinitesimal things that are occurring, atomized. At an atomized level, we are now all being individually influenced by the various algorithms and AI systems, the search parameters, the like lists, the metadata that the systems are gathering up about you are being used to present you with a atomized, individualized influence or set of influences that will affect you personally. Because the system's rapidly learning about what you like, what you dislike, what you think about, and all that kind of stuff. And it's reflecting that back at you to use it against you to influence you. And on the bigger scale, we've got the things like these protests that have been going on. That scale can be affected at the individual level. This is why I wanted to mention it in this kind of way, this kind of metaphorical sense of the scales of the dragon. A lot of the dragon's power is based on the scales of influence that it can implement against others that challenge it. So part of the thing that defeats their opposer is the fact that this thing is such a massive hulking beast. It's like you cut one head off, it'll grow another or two. That's the kind of image of the Hydra, which is why it's used in that metaphorical way in the biblical text. It represents something that you think you're killing it, but you're not. It's just getting stronger and stronger and stronger. The more you try to attack it directly, the more you're defeating yourself. You're making your own problems worse. So just like in these protests, for those that may be misguided or deluded by some of the bullshit and propaganda, or they're actively working for the agencies, for the narratives, etc., attacking the system directly, trying to punch a policeman, trying to beat a riot copper to show how your ideas are right and his are wrong, is just serving the agenda. You're making the Hydra bigger. You just chopped one head off, so two is going to go back. And a lot of the protection of that beast is not just its sheer size, it's those scales. And each one of those scales, in the way I'm trying to encapsulate this in its metaphor, represents a different element of the body of influence, the demographics of peoples that they persuaded to accept or believe in certain ideas. So you could think of one of the scales could be like the green agenda. It's not a head of the Hydra. One element of the heads is the green agenda. That's the aggressive portion of the system's energy. You know, that's them coming at you to attack you, to drive you in a certain direction. But when you turn that back and you start projecting your energy in a way to defeat that argumentation, in other words, you start bringing up questions or other evidence that refutes their claims or their justifications for what they're trying to do, that is in effect you attacking them. That's your energy going at them, so it's deflected by those little scales, those shields. The bigger the scale of the demographic of energy that they can garner from a group of the public, the stronger that makes the beast itself, the more protected the beast is. And these scales are like multiple. It's covered in them. And they're all different little parts of how the system works, you know, different little justifications of their claims to authority and all that kind of bullshit. How many people believe that money is real? And I know we all have to, say all, the vast majority of us have to use it. You know, just to do daily living, you have to have these bits of paper that you hand to each other in exchange for goods and services, etc., etc. But it's not really real in the way they claim it is. But you believe the illusion and it makes the gears turn, you know, it allows things to move and daily life goes on. You know, it could be done in a different way, but they presented it in this illusionary fashion which people adopt. Yeah, happily believe the illusion and ignore the contradictions and hypocrisies and the problems that arise from those things. Yeah? So, Scales of the Dragon, why did I want to mention it? Because primarily that element of, if you try and attack the Hydra head on, if you try to use its own methodology against it, you use violence against violence, you never-ending violence. Because as soon as violence comes up again, your answer is to use violence to defeat it. So it just goes on and on and on and on and on. The Hydra gets bigger and bigger and bigger and grows more and more heads until we end up into, like it is a lot now in recent times, this massive confusion where there are so many different viewpoints, so many different ideas, so many different political ideologies, so many different arguments going on, so many claims to authority or to truth of evidence, you know, so my body of evidence is correct according to who? Yeah, and you find out that the peer review process was paid for by the very pharmaceutical companies that are trying to sell you this supposed truth, which turns out to be bullshit, you know, all that kind of stuff. That's a hyper-normalization effect. The chaos has become a saturation, a white noise. That is part of the scales of the dragon. The scale of the effect. The more people they can get under one banner, the more powerful the effect, because there's more energy they can tap into. If you claim to be the ruler of a kingdom, and in your kingdom there's only 100 people, then if you're lucky, you can get all 100 people onto the battlefield to protect their nation, you know, your tiny little nation state. But if you've got a global reach where there are literally millions of people willing to put themselves in fatal situations potentially to defend an idea that you sold to them, that's why the beast is that Hydra, that big Hydra thing. So I wanted to put that metaphor out there because I feel if you can see those bigger effects as a singular kind of coalescing or root direction of energy, I'm not sure if that even makes sense. I'll try and reword it. You see those different elements as being part of a bigger picture, you know, like looking at the jigsaw pieces as part of the whole picture. then it also helps to reveal that each one of those things can be looked at individually. And again, like you only end up with the complete jigsaw puzzle because you find each of the pieces and you put it back in its place in the original picture. You know, in the same way, that process can be reversed. You can look at each of those individual scales and you can reduce the power of them. If you stop buying into certain bullshit ideas that the system has sold you, the shielding value of that energy that you used to put into that shield, into that scale, is reduced. The scales get smaller and smaller and smaller. How do you find the chink in the armor of the beast? By reducing the size of those scales, reducing the protective value that they offer the beast itself. You know, it doesn't grow those things of its own ability. It's not a natural part of it. It appropriates and absorbs them from outside of itself and sticks them on like armor plating. Right? I think it's back to that. I know it sounds simplistic, but I find it to be a truism. The sheer scale of power of a lot of the stuff that is going on at the moment, the global reach of a globalized tyrannical system, is only enabled by the sheer scale of the numbers of people that support it. The reason it is so big and vast as it is now, such that it has become obviously dehumanized, this thing is mechanistic. Even everyday people, those that are supposedly somewhat unaware or don't think about this kind of shit, it's becoming more and more obvious to everyone that this system is dehumanizing, mechanistic. It doesn't give a fuck about the human value or the living value within its own system, because it will do things like throw grenades at citizens who are protesting because of the injustices and the difficult conditions in their own country that they support by their own effort and energy. You know, they're the taxpayers that actually fund the wages paid to those policemen that throw the grenades at the taxpayers who pay their wage. So hopefully that makes sense in that way of reducing the power of the beast by shrinking its protective value of the scales that adorn its body. Something else I wanted to mention with a lot of this stuff that's going on at the moment. Although we're only halfway through February, but we will be going into March, and towards the end of March, obviously, is supposed to be this Brexit shit going on. But it also made me think, like, beware the Ides of March. You know, we've got a lot of chaos building up at the moment and a lot of very pent-up energy in a large portion of the public. Not everyone, you know, some people just don't give a shit. Some people are just happy in their own little bubbles where, you know, as long as their life's okay, they don't give a fuck. Until their hand gets blown off, they don't care, mate. Yeah? But there is a hell of a lot of energy all across the world that is realizing that this singular global tyrannical system is being birthed at the moment. It is now starting to, you know, it's crowning. People can actually see it being physically revealed now in the stuff that's happening in their own societies. So the Ides of March, I just wanted to mention it just because, you know, we're going to have to go through the Ides just means the middle, you know, the middle period where it crosses over, where you go from one side of the scale to the other. You cross that middle bit, the fulcrum. That's the Ides in the middle of March. You can connect that to various other occultic knowledge to do with the third month and the spring seasonal information, astrotheological connections to March. There's various things that correlate in that timeline. I was curious why, when they first announced that it would be the 29th of March, I wondered if there was some kind of reasoning for those particular dates. It could be just because of something to do with the tax year and stuff like that, but why is the tax year still on the old world calendar? You know, in the old world calendar, the new year began in April. The tax year begins in April. All that kind of stuff. But something else that's been, for me, in my perception, has been building up over the last few weeks And I think it is connected into a lot of this stuff. And this shouldn't take me too long to say. I'll try and wrap it up. But to summarize it into just 2 words as like a description, it might make sense to some people, but I'd call it the cyanim surge. You know, they often talk about a surge in a military sense where they'll send in this bulk of extra troops and equipment to try and overwhelm the enemy with a sudden surge of onslaught, a bit like a blitzkrieg style. You know, that was the effectiveness of the blitzkrieg, rapid assault, such that your enemy doesn't have time to recover and you puncture through their front lines, etc., etc. But recently I've been seeing patination of certain rhetoric, certain arguments, and including certain names that have started to reappear within my perception, you know, and I'm mainly on YouTube more than anywhere else, but I look at other websites as well. But seeing this cross correlation, this patination of recurrence, a repetition of certain names and methodologies that I haven't seen for a few years. I might have mentioned this not so long ago. A few weeks ago, I think I mentioned something similar. Recently, it's been more fervent. I've seen more of it. You know, the level of it has increased, which is why I'm now saying surge. I've got the impression from what I'm seeing that there is a deliberate push following certain narratives at the moment and methodologies. I know I've said that multiple times now, but it's like the way they'll try and use certain arguments, fallacious arguments that get repeated again and again and again. Even when you show, you know, you point out how they're fallacious, they'll just come back a couple of months later and try the same argument on you again. Some people just haven't learned yet. Maybe they've come across this argument, they don't realize it's wrong or whatever, and they pick it up and they think, oh, that's so-and-so about that, and they present it because they haven't heard it before. Yeah? They're nescient to the fact that it's already been addressed in one way or another. But some of it is also the kind of methodology that is used to deliberately try and mess with people, to manipulate them, to exploit them, to hook them into certain ideas, to recruit them, to add their energy into one of those scales of demographics that is then used to serve the direction of a certain narrative or agenda. Yeah, I've seen a lot of that recently, and I felt it appropriate to mention it because of some of the stuff like the Yellow Vest protests that are happening at the moment. Yeah, I've argued recently that I don't think it's completely engineered, simply because I feel there's a lot of energy already out there in the public that all they needed was a direction to go in. So when somebody comes along and says, hey, there's this uniformity that you can take part in by adopting this yellow vest, and you know, these are our demands and this is the kind of things we want to see happening. Are you in for that? And you go, yeah, I'm there, mate. Now that people have been shown a possible opportunity to achieve something, they're joining in because the energy was already there. But I do think there is very much a lot of engineering going on to the way these protests are emanating or being presented to the public. It's been enabled in many ways, and things such as the extreme or violent conflicting between some of the protesters and the police forces is deliberate to exacerbate the problems, to antagonize the public, you know, to hook their energy and get them to take part in the circus game. So that re-emergence of these kind of patterns that I'm seeing happening, connecting to other stuff as well, like the Stephen Yaxley Lennon is now all over the place saying how he's going to debunk the BBC or expose the BBC and all this. And it's like, mate, what are you talking about? Expose the BBC? There is literally a mountain of evidence to present about the BBC. Why are you needing it to expose it yet again? You know, Jimmy Savile. Just Jimmy Savile. Let alone all the other stuff that we could go through. Just Jimmy Savile. What is it you need to do all over again that connects into the BBC? Why are you wanting people to have this argumentation with the BBC over certain topics? What is your rhetoric based on? What is your argumentation based on? Is it based on the same kind of fallacious sophistry bullshit that comes straight out of that Middle Eastern country with the first letter I? Yeah, it's funny how the correlations of these things going on. At the same time, there's all this push about the Labour Party being anti-Semitic. And there's various layers and elements of that we could talk about. You know, there's certain genuine argumentation that can be made. There's certain rhetoric used by some members of the Labour Party that for Jewish people, they feel it is anti-Semitic, blah, 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 blah. But it's all part of fueling the same narratives, fueling the same arguments again, argumentum ad infinitum, while based on the same fallacious rhetorics of, oh, well, we've got the right to defend ourselves. What you're doing is not defending yourself. What you're doing is offensive. Offense is not defense. They are two separate words because they represent opposing dualistic concepts. So you can't attack me and then tell me you're doing it to defend yourself. The same methodology being rolled out by the police in Paris is methodology learnt in that Middle Eastern country. Urban pacification, terrorizing a demographic of people so that they are so subjugated that they're too afraid to even ask for the rights that they supposedly have, let alone beyond that. You know, the level that it's occurring at the moment is beyond that, but that's just a conservative way of presenting the idea. You know, all this stuff. I've seen so many soccer accounts now, it's ridiculous. There are more soccer accounts on YouTube than there is in all the Chinese laundries on the globe. You know, if you took every Chinese laundry on the planet and found all the missing socks that are there and put them all in one big, there's more soccer accounts on YouTube now than that. Yeah, you know, it's a bit inevitable because of it being a digital environment. It's basically infinite, really. You know, maybe not truly, but it is vast. You know, like the vastness of space. There can be trillions and trillions and trillions of soccer accounts. But the sheer number of soccer accounts that seem to be popping up all over the place. And, you know, I've seen names that I haven't seen for a few years that are now all of a sudden back in the stream, back in the conversation, you know, being shared around, being commenting under people's videos and stuff like that. I ain't seen you for like 3-4 years. Funny how, but that was about the same time as there was that upsurge of energy here in the UK, you know, about 2012, 2013. And there was also that, you know, beginnings of the push towards certain narratives of association to anti-Semitism and the control of speech online because it's hate speech and shit like that. All these narratives are correlating together at the moment. And they seem to be all fueling each other, or like they're all coming together towards singular targets now, or the number of their targets are getting less, such that they are drawn together, and now they're more revealed as being a singular unit, not separate things, not naturally organic reactions popping up all over the place. No, it's all directed. Yeah, makes me wonder, you know, 8200 and Brigade 77 and all that kind of shit. I know they're probably listening. They're probably here taking notes. I'm sure they have done over the years. They've taken notes and they've altered their own methodology in relation to some of the stuff we're doing. You know, listening to the Raconteur News guys earlier, well, Jason on tonight, and Paul wasn't there tonight, but you know, listening to that, it's obviously difficult to do in a chat room because of the limitation of chat, you know, the amount of text you can type in and whatever, and it doesn't include body language, so you don't get any of the inflection or intonation and all that kind of shit. But most of that, what that guy was saying tonight, not Jason, the guest he had on, is basically the epitome of some of the stuff I've just been describing. It was about recruitment into demographic manipulation. Recruiting people's energy. It doesn't matter about the individuals. It was just like talking about the demographic as just the public. Just, you know, just that alone should be indicative of a certain mindset. So, seeing a lot of this stuff going on at the moment, this push towards certain narratives or this coalescing of certain agendas. I could add in other stuff as well. The big long laundry stuff, list of stuff that seems to be correlating at the moment that all connect back to roots that are based on the same kind of argumentation and serving the same agendas. So I'm curious at the moment as whether there's going to be something major occur that connects back to that Middle Eastern country. And this is why they're prepping. They're getting this environment ready for their damage control, so that when this event happens, whatever it is they're planning to do, where they're going to try and steamroller over Gaza, because please don't forget the protests in Gaza have been still ongoing. There's still more deaths there, protesters being shot by IDF forces because they were protesting. Yeah, there's only a slight difference between what was occurring in Paris and what's going on the Gaza Strip. In the Gaza Strip, they've been authorized to use live rounds and deadly force and shit like that. But those units, those troops there doing that shit, following those orders, were trained in the same tactics as the guys who are on the streets in Paris. It's just the guys on the streets in Paris haven't been given the okay to use live ammunition and deadly force. Well, they haven't been given the permission to use deadly force. Maybe if it's conveniently accidental deadly force, plausible deniability deadly force. That way, the terror is included while the system, the state can go, oh, we didn't tell them to aim for the head. Bullshit, you didn't. That is the training tactic of that Middle Eastern country. Aim for the head. Fuck the international laws on this shit. No, fuck the international community. We're the chosen ones. We do it the way we want because we're going to win. The rest of you are you're all just Detroiters that we need to get rid of. I'll start ranting. If I am already ranting, but I know I asked some of the guys before we started broadcasting tonight, I said, have you seen certain people, certain names popping up again recently? And yeah, it's not just me. There does seem to be a certain push by the influencers that, doesn't mean that they are directly employed by any particular agency of any particular country. This again connects back to what I was saying, or trying to imply with my metaphor of the scales of the dragon. Yeah, some of the people out there are just nescient and recruited into this kind of stuff because they think they're trying to do, they think they're doing something, and people just want to help. Some get involved in it just because they're self-serving and they just want to profit for themselves, and they don't think about the bigger consequences. They don't give a shit. As long as they get their jollies or their cut of the wedge, that's what they're after. So they'll join in with shit whether they think they're going to get something out of it, not because they give a shit one way or the other about the cause or the individuals involved or any of that. But the root of it, the intention, the energy, the body of the energy that inspires it, enables it, and fuels it is that Hydra, the body of the Hydra. It has a root, and that root coalesces around the big agendas that we've often talked about, the globalizing agenda. I know I'm forgetting stuff that I meant to mention, but join in if you want, guys. I've pretty much said what I wanted to say. I'm sure, like I do, I'll say something else as well in a minute when I remember. But
evening, Cookie. You all right?
Hello.
Good evening. Yeah, so I was just listening away like everyone else. Yeah, the reducing the power of the beast. I like that quote he said. Reducing the power of the beast. Revealing it's the revealing of the truth, isn't it? It's out there. People are seeing what's happening and are putting the cycles together. They're seeing it as a repeating thing as well. As we get older, we see that more and more and more, and they're revealing more and more and more as we go through it. People are realizing they're in, tax slavery, economic slavery, call it you want, it's slavery. It was funny to see I say funny, but the Porsches burning in Paris, those cars that were set on fire, and I thought, well, that's that to leave them there? Was that deliberate? Maybe, I don't know. There seems to be a lot of cars parked down those streets. They seem to be going down when I was watching it. They seem to be going a slightly different way. I don't know. I mean, Paris is huge, isn't it? So
Yeah.
maybe those people got caught out and didn't realize, you know, they shouldn't have left their cars there at all. But certainly, the ones that were the higher end ones, the symbols of power, you know, they were targeted when they burnt out.
They didn't show you the Fiat Uno getting burnt out, did they? No.
No.
Oh, we'll show you the Ferrari getting burnt out.
Yeah.
There's something about manipulated press to exacerbate certain, trigger points in people.
And you could see that it was all based on that. The RT coverage was a lot on the actual violence that was occurring, and they seem to be in the right place at the right time. And it has got more violent as it's gone on in that sense, because they started to use, like you say, these tactics. So, you know, they're beginning to, you know, really put pressure on people now. They're going out, was it 13 weeks? And last week they wanted to just put that image out there in the press, because I'm sure there's lots of other areas that weren't, you know, there wasn't nothing happening, you know, but they don't want to focus on that. They just want to focus on the negative to bring it, you know, to bring about this kind of like, oh, well, you know, we just have to, you know, you'd be scared to go out now, whatever, or you may get into some trouble. But, you know, the way they use those tactics, it was military style. I could see them. They were sort of following them round. They were trying to, I think, kettle them at some stage, at some points. And there was just random sporadic things happening all across that sort of route they were walking down.
I don't know whether it's just because, like you say, you know, RT's coverage is typically RT biased. You know, they like the riot porn. They like filming all the violence and destruction and stuff, you know, because it's Russia today. So they want the European public to see that side of shit, yeah. But I've just brain farted and forgot why I mentioned RT covering it.
Well, I was just thinking the guy got his hand blown off. You mentioned.
Yes, I was going to say the small unit tactics that they're using. Yeah, I was going to say that I'm not sure if it's just because of the RT coverage, because I've looked at other coverage as well, like on Euronews and Press TV and some of the others, and the independent people filming stuff.
Yeah.
But every time I look at it, they're not showing the big mass numbers of police doing kettling. You know, like we experienced down in London during the Occupy thing, yeah? When you got there, there was literally a cordon of manpower around the area. There were hundreds of police all linked up to block off streets and shit like that. And the situation as it's been ongoing in Paris, what I've mainly seen is nothing like that. There's been small little groups of police, small unit tactics. Yeah, the small unit tactics are no good for controlling a crowd. They're just not. You can't control a fucking crowd of people, especially not when the numbers are vastly different. But what a small unit's tactic is good for is snatch and grab and destructive behaviour. So in other words, you see someone in the crowd that you get the order in the ear of, oh, so-and-so's identified, he's a main organiser, bro, get him. You go in. This is why as well they're using round shields predominantly, yeah? Round shields are for exactly that, small unit tactics, snatch and grab style shit. So they're going in, picking on people that they've been told to deliberately pick on or target, or they're going in just to cause harm, to antagonise the crowd. Yeah, they're not there to control the crowd like they would with numbers and big square shields. Kettle them.
Yeah, on Saturday, for the first time, we saw lines of yellow vests pushing the police back everywhere. Yeah. Cerebrosana, 2 weeks ago, there was the incident where the police had actually come forward, like you said, and targeted one of the organisers. Shot him in the head. He was lucky not to lose his eye. Yeah, and she did a video on that where you can actually see two police units, one covering, then another one comes in, a line of 6 of them, and they come up as close as they can to this guy, shoot right at him directly. So you're right about the targeting, yeah? And also she did another video just the other day on a guy who was standing next to the Porsche that got burnt. And he didn't have a yellow jacket on. He had a very distinctive brown stripy jacket.
Saw him, yeah.
Totally really weird. And he looks at the camera at the end. So he can be identified, that guy.
Hmm.
Yeah, and he was talking to the fire officers. I mean, he didn't talk to the police, at least not on
Maybe he was
camera.
the owner of the vehicle.
No, I doubt it. I doubt it. He was reaching into the vehicle at one point. They got pictures of him reaching into the vehicle, and then he's just standing around waiting for the police. Now, there is one thing about that the police are told. I think they're told not to worry too much about private property during demonstrations. That can't be one of their priorities, protecting property. Yeah. So that they didn't arrest anybody for the burning of the car, unless they actually catch somebody putting something in there, they'll grab them. But if it's already there, it's gone, it's over. They can't waste their time. But even so, yeah, I mean, the guy is now on film. He ought to be.
He could.
Finding out who he is.
I'd still say he could be the owner, though. He might have been doing an insurance job. What a better way to get an insurance job on you. You got it on credit. You owe loads of money on this posh, stupid sports car. This dick extension sports car. So how do you recoup that credit, that debt loss? Oh, you just park it somewhere where the yellow vests are going to be, and then you just slip out. Milk bottle full of vodka down in the footwell. Oh, look, it's on fire. Oh, I better get the plane.
Then it could have been like the time we saw that police car burn, and then afterwards somebody realised it was a police car they hadn't been using for 15 years.
Yeah,
Then went out of the scrapyard.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of damage anyway. This previous week, I saw tweets about the number of mopeds that people had seen thrown into the river, and that as well plays on another thing that Society of Spectacle, the book outlined, is they try to divide the people of the cities from the people of the country. So if they can say a lot of these yellow vests, they're coming in from the countryside, and they can try and turn the people of Paris against these demonstrations. Yeah.
In a similar way, I think they have done similar in the UK, with the difference between the rural people, the country folk, and the city dwellers. The city dwellers are all meant to be left wing. All the city dwellers are SJW, transgender, beta male, cooks, and all that kind of shit. And anyone who lives in the country is a perfect conservative, traditionalist, far right extremist even. But yeah, they've done the same here in the UK.
But what I was going to say is, this was something that I thought up during the week, and it is that any time you speak truth, it will sound like an accusation to people who have got lies in their heart, the people who are liars. Yeah. And where is it? I've got a meme here. I'll put it up. Yeah. This one. Well, we got it. In a society full of liars, the truth is a scary thing, because that's the thing about people that are living with lies. Any truth will remind them of that. And so, you get this narrative, the mainstream narrative. And, the people that force that, they call it the fluoride stare, and they call it the stupid, and the people go along with this, and they kind of know it's lies, but they won't stop and examine themselves. They don't dare. Mm-hmm. And so, in all their conversations, there is this assumption, this sentence that is squeezed together. Oh, we're all agreeing with the mainstream narrative because, open brackets, we're avoiding looking at ourselves inside, closed brackets. And that is the idea that is being compressed and is kind of like the flywheel of their narrative. Mm-hmm. It keeps it going along, which is why Twitter and social media are such things for this, because you can keep scrolling away from that self-examination.
There's something that I thought I was tempted to do it tonight actually, but I might do it next week. But I was thinking about connected again into that kind of global consciousness. I know I've spoken ages ago. I haven't spoken about this for a while, but ages ago I used to often speak about how the internet was like a physical emanation of our desire for telepathy. So in other words, we want to be able to know what everybody else is thinking about. So we come up with this, we naturally emanate this technology. The development comes about that leads to this technology because it's, whether consciously aware of or not, it's an inner desire that people have to I wonder what he's thinking about me, or what does she think about this, and that ability to tap into that global consciousness would be very revealing to ease the pressure that leads to potential conflict. So all those difficulties between people could be resolved if you could actually see inside somebody's head and go, oh, right, you're feeling that way because you're worried about this thing. Yeah. And it could ease a lot of the tensions. But the reality of what's been occurring over the last decade plus, since they gave us the internet, really, has been this attempt to divert the conscious awareness away from the shadow elements, such that if, like we've spoken about before, you do the inner work for yourself, on yourself, you do the shadow work within yourself, which is a matter of introspecting, thinking about your own flaws and inconsistencies and hypocrisies and, the bad things that you do, and trying to find out, well, why am I doing that? How do I stop myself, or how do I heal myself from those shadows, from those deep wounds that cause certain elements within my personality or ego or whatever? Apply that to the global consciousness. If we now have this technology available to us that would allow us to do the same shadow work on the global consciousness, it's there as a tool for us to do that. But that would lead to a healing on a global scale, a healing on a group consciousness level, a mass consciousness level. The system can't allow that. So it's set up this methodology where it's appropriated that idea and it's steering people away from it. So rather than utilizing this technology to ease those problems that cause us to conflict with each other, instead, it's inverted that and it's given us more differences to argue and conflict over.
But,
You see what I mean? Yeah, it's drawing people away from the shadow work and making them just create more shadows.
An interesting point on that would be what you've had. Some of those things of the past that cause a lot of pain are coming back, like in Spain, where you've got the main Conservative Party standing side by side with the ultra-right Nazis in Madrid because of the Catalan independence and the trial that's starting tomorrow. And in a way, that is not something that the system would choose to actually have, because these old wounds are supposed to be healed, like the royal family in England. You never talk about the old
Jimmy Savile.
They never let that wall crumble, and they even admit that those old problems existed, but they're becoming so ugly and so obvious in Spain as a part of this rising consciousness. So these little individual boils and zits are fighting back individually out of control of the system. So the people themselves are looking for this new consciousness, and the elements of the past that they are trying to fight against, they themselves, rather than obeying orders, are reacting like the animal self that they were originally. If you see what I mean? Yeah. Yeah, because the system itself, it wants this bland Euro control over everything. Everybody's going to be happy, and swipe cards. I mean, this ugliness that's taking place all over Europe. Yeah, this is the individual elements trying to fight back on their own. The individual demons. They're not, they don't obey orders all the time. Yeah, if you see what I mean. So that is something to look out for. That is something to focus on. Yeah, if you want to do that inner work of healing the old wounds, you've got to take them one by one, because you can't take on the system, because the system knows the game, like you say. Yeah, and it will never expose itself. So you got to look at the ugliest thing when it shows its head.
Yeah. The beast will never reveal the chink in its armor. It'll always try and hide that from you.
Yeah, but this Spanish dragon it keeps putting his wing up where it's hurt. Look at this. This was the ugliness, and we're not going to let it go. We can't, because we don't trust the future. We don't trust change.
Well, all the systems are the same, aren't they, across Europe? Democracy, or whatever you want to call it, that sort of system, and that's the sort of, like you say, that mass consciousness sort of rising out of the same kind of oppression in each country. Every country's under its own kind of oppression or tax slavery or whatever it is. They're having to fit into a system that's unfair. It doesn't, it's not equal. Inequality everywhere you look. So, that's
As-
where we're at now, isn't it? It's beginning to, click in.
As a little example of that, I'll just do a screen share of this just so people can see what I'm referring to. Hopefully you can see that. Give a shout out to that guy, Scott Webb. That's the name of his channel. But Scott Webb. His channel's called That Guy, Scott Webb. Go and subscribe to his channel. He keeps an eye on a lot of the mainstream news, and he'll report on the stuff that's been put out in the mainstream news, but he adds his own commentary on top as well. And he puts together some good playlists that list a lot of connected patterns, like we've been talking about. When you look through them over time, you start to see these patterns of output in the mainstream media that indicate the direction of a lot of these narratives and agendas. So even though, it's the mainstream media, and you can caveat that, but watching the patterns of what they pump into the public consciousness gives you an indication of the direction the public will go. Because if you see a group of people who keep being told to go left, go left, go left, you can have a high degree of confidence that when they come to a junction, they're going to go left. That's just, it doesn't mean they absolutely will, but it means that's likely what's going to happen. But he was talking about this one news article. I just wanted to use it as an example for that, of a woman locked in a cell for 7 hours after calling a transgender woman a man on Twitter. You could look into the story. It's some of it is obviously a bit silly, this kind of gender politics bullshit. It's referencing stuff on Twitter, which, we've sort of implied in what we've been talking about. These platforms being used to manipulate people en masse, and the individual situations don't really matter. This woman's suffering, and the person she was contesting with is, in effect, claiming that they're suffering as well. But the point being, their individual situations are just being used as examples, extreme examples, to fuel the larger energy, the body of energy that's going on with this situation.
Yep.
Just
it's a conveyor belt of wedge issues in that regard.
Yes, right. Twitter is perfect for that, isn't it? But that was why I wanted to use it as just an example to what you were saying. This is the stage we're at, where if you misspeak, if you use disallowed thought, you're expressing a thought by typing something online. It's the equivalent to you standing in a public square and saying, I think this. That's what you're doing when you're posting stuff online. You're just saying it publicly. It's still stuff that you're saying. But now we've got to this stage where if you say something that's not allowed, you potentially face imprisonment. Even though this woman wasn't given like a custodial sentence, she was in effect imprisoned. She had her freedom removed for several hours just because of a simple post on this fucking twat platform.
You must use the correct compelled vocabulary.
Yeah. The right thing. You've got to use the right thing and not the wrong thing. But to me, that's, it's part of an ongoing body of evidence now that this kind of shit is not just, it's possibly in the future, or the technocratic tyranny doesn't really exist, mate. You're just scared of washing machines. It's like, really? If I was just scared of washing machines, then what is this example? And, like I said, you can caveat about it being in the mainstream media and that kind of shit. But you ask around and you'll find people, probably people maybe even your own relatives, etc., maybe even you yourself, that have had these kind of consequences enacted upon you because you happen to say things that the agenda doesn't want out there, or is trying to encourage you to go the other direction. Use the correct thing, the right thing. It's not in the future. It's not a dystopian fictional novel. This is reality that is now emanating around you, and that is just one in the line of many examples of how this shit is now being enacted in reality.
Aye. I suppose a lot of the control system's power comes from keeping people ignorant in that way, and
Yeah.
Keeping people ignorant of scales as well, like the Fibonacci scale, for example.
Yeah.
Cymatics and so on.
Yeah.
Ancient knowledge which has been systematically destroyed.
The frequency scales of interference. You could connect that into the Wi-Fi technology, because at certain power outputs and certain frequencies, this stuff could be innocuous to us. It wouldn't do any long-term damage. Your biology would recover from it, etc., etc. But when it gets to a certain output level, then no, you were going to suffer detrimental long-term permanent effects from this shit. But they don't want you to think about it. They don't want you to talk about that. They want you to just keep using the phones, keep using the tech. In fact, get more of it, more of it, more of it. You sign up for a new internet service now, and they will, by default, want to send you a Wi-Fi connection, a Wi-Fi router. You have to ask. So I've been told, I haven't had a new one for years, but you have to ask for one that has an Ethernet socket on it now, because if you don't, they just send you one that's Wi-Fi only. I wonder why that is. Why is it they're all so insistent that everything should be on Wi-Fi?
Okay.
And I was going to say they'll send you an Alexa as well.
Yeah.
I used to study a lot of chemistry, yeah, and when you're studying molecules, ordinary small organic molecules, they're always studying their infrared profile and their microwave profile, yeah, because these are the frequencies at which the molecules naturally vibrate, and this is how you can tell some molecules from another. Yeah, just shine the light through them, and reflect, some don't. Yeah. And this is right down to the bonds, the individual bonds. I'll see if I can find a couple.
I was listening to, I know I've heard you talk about it before, and I've actually read the paper before. Kafka, she used to be Kafka Winston. Well, now she's Never Lose Truth, her channel name. Carol, her name is. But she was reading through some bits from Barry Trower's paper from the 90s, where he's talking about Tetra, the police radio frequency system of communication that they are basically still using. But even back in the 90s, and I can remember talking about this when we've been doing Hangouts years ago, yeah. But even back in the 90s, they were talking then about, even amongst the police themselves, there are obvious biological results. There's evidence that can be studied of how the use of this technology is affecting people detrimentally. So he was, presenting a lot of the information way back then.
Yeah.
You can get that document. You can read that report that he put together, Barry Trower's report. And that was when he was employed as a professional to do that kind of study for the agencies, for the police force, etc. So this guy's not just some crazy tinfoil hat off the internet. It's all bullshit. No, go and actually put the effort in. Do some fucking reading, for fuck's sake.
As far as I know, that was making some of the police ill, actually having effects,
causing cancers and shit like that.
And they were off sick, so obviously they were blaming it on that technology they were using back then. Same stuff now.
They've never really got rid of it. They just changed it slightly. They're suffering the same effects still. They just now they don't bother publicly talking about it anymore, and they don't commission any other studies like that one.
Yeah.
Let's have a quick check in the. Oh, sorry, I have a quick check in the chat room. Hello again to everyone in the chat room. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for giving us your attention for a bit, for a couple of hours at best. What we're up to, 22:30. So
an hour and a half. I forgot to mention it's the year of the pig as well.
Yeah.
In the Chinese astrology, that's the new one, which is apparently really good luck. It's very lucky.
Well, there was one story I saw pop up, which I thought, in the year of the pig, that's not supposedly a good luck story. And I did wonder at the time when I saw it, I thought, is this really subtle anti-China propaganda?
More than likely.
Because It's this story about how supposedly a woman collapsed in a pig pen. She fell over or something in a pig pen, and the pigs ate her.
That's right. Yeah, I did see
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
So that's not exactly like piggy good luck, you know. Like the year of the pig, good luck. That's not very lucky, is it? Yeah, but like I say, was that just subtle anti-China propaganda? Maybe. It's part of the problem of this hyper-normalization is things that you might think are just, you know, banal or silly or just, you know, seemingly empty of any useful information are actually still part and parcel of the manipulation of the narratives, you know, including creating whole new storylines. You know, they're throwing all this stuff in constantly. You know, what's that you show and go? Frequencies.
This is an interesting one, yeah. This is the dielectric effect on a water molecule, yeah. Okay, so you take a H2O, right? Oxygen with 2 hydrogens, and when microwave hits it, what it does, it actually causes the entire molecule to spin around, because the H2O has it's called the dielectric effect. Basically, every molecule has a polarity, yeah, and obviously it's with the oxygen, but it's also equal with the hydrogens. So it's like a magnet. Imagine a magnet with a north at the bottom, and then it splits into 2 south poles at the top. Those are the 2 hydrogens. So when you hit it with a microwave, the whole bloody thing spins around. And the efficiency of microwaves, yeah, you can see it on the red line going up, yeah. Just when the red line hits the top, that's the 2.45 gigahertz. Yeah, the one that a microwave uses. That's why they use it in a microwave, because it is the most efficient way to heat water. And that actually increases if the water is a little bit salty, like meat, for example, whether it's living or in the microwave. Yeah, you know, because I mean, yeah, Warren put a cat in there once, didn't you? Yeah, so the 2.45 that they're going to be using for the 5G is the most efficient wavelength for heating up water. Now you compare it, just come down the slope, yeah, to like what do you got there? You got the 10 would be 100 megahertz, yeah. The 100 might be 1 megahertz. You know, it comes down a hell of a lot, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah? And there is a point where the blue line, that's where the dielectric isn't kind of working. Or is it the
0 degrees?
Yeah, but anyway, you know, that is the most efficient wavelength. So apart from anything else, all these people that say, oh, it used to be 100 megahertz, now it's going to be 100 gigahertz, which is bigger, which is a fucking stupid statement to make. It makes no fucking difference. Firstly, it's the power. And secondly, like you said, there are certain resonances. You know, every molecule, you know, they use X-rays for crystals because they're fucking solid, and the X-rays bounce off. You know, and that's why X-ray machine is not a good thing, because you know, it can affect the molecules. But yeah, this is why 5G is not so good. Yeah, because the frequencies they're hoping to use, and every molecule, you know, as it gets bigger, it still has a dielectric. It still has a north and south pole, you know, on the average, and that can be turned.
Yeah. And when your body is made up of 60+%, you know, some people argue 70 or even 80% water, and it's not pure water, it's saline, it's salty water. So what you're saying about, you know, affecting water and water with salts in it, that's most of your biology, most of your body.
Will it boil your blood as well?
Potentially, with enough power pumped through it, yeah, but I don't think that's, you know, that might be something they're working towards. I don't think that's the end goal of why they're rolling out 5G. You know, I don't agree with the idea that they're going to set up a whole grid network just so that they can press a button and fry us all on the spot kind of thing. You know.
They don't need to.
It's about influencing thinking and biology.
No, it's about stopping thinking. I think.
Exactly. That's what I mean.
Yeah, it's encouraging and controlling your emotional states.
You end up with a population of permanently ill because their biology is degraded, and forever cloudy mind. You know, you have a mind fog because of this level of saturation that messes with your thinking, such that you can't keep track of what the fuck's going on in the world. In effect, potentially, you're talking about something that's kind of like what Huxley was talking about with the submoron. You know, they want a population that majority is not capable of thinking in any expansive or constructive way, does not have the cognitive abilities to figure out what is being done to them. So they become, like in the storyline, the submoron was, you know, just obeyed orders. They had just enough intelligence to follow an order given to them and carry out simplistic tasks. That's it. Yeah.
See, maybe that's why we see like another influencer returning after a couple of years, Blair. He's been back again, offering another false dichotomy. You know what I mean? This time it's Brexit. You know what I mean? Like where there's like already democratically fucking decided matters. You know what I mean? Who is this fucking mass murderer to pontificate on these issues? Do you know what I mean? Is that the period then? The 2 years, and then like it's like the memory has just been washed to everything that he has done, and he can just waltz into the fucking public square again and start offering his opinion. Do you know what I mean?
I think people like him. I'll go a second. I was going to say, I think people like him and somebody I saw earlier on, they've got no reverse gear. They can't look back, you know. And so the narrative that they believed in, they just have to keep going with it. They can't look back, you know. And I think Blair's the same way, you know. He believes his own bullshit. And if he ever stops and thinks, no, can't do that, can't stop, can't look, can't examine things, just got to keep going, yeah. They have to keep moving forward. There's no reverse gear. There's no way out for them. And so, yeah, they begin to look a bit ridiculous, don't they?
And looking ridiculous when it comes to that. And when Cookie was talking about adornment, David Icke, just like Tony Blair, he's got the blue shirt on, open collared shirt, like sleeves rolled up, portraying himself as a working class man of the people. You know what I mean? It's pathetic.
What was I was going to say? I forgot.
Ike is a good example of those people that come out with truth. People think, oh, good, we're hearing truth. And like Max Igan, then they go in, they deliberately undermine what they've been saying. And so people think, I thought I knew what a man speaking the truth sounds like, because everything he was saying was good and it was true. And now he's telling me the earth's flat. Confusion.
It's bullshit.
Yeah.
I remember what I was going to say. It was about the 2 years thing. I know I mentioned this not so long ago. I speculate that it's based on budgeting, basically. These groups, the ones that instigate and fuel the core of the narrative output, the propaganda output, they are given tasks and they are budgeted in approximately 2 year periods. I'm guesstimating a little bit. But to me, it's, you know, it connects into the infrastructure of the system. A lot of them are based in that kind of way. You know, they don't really change on the fly very easily. The groups have to be funded. They have to be logistically supported, you know, put in situ and all this kind of stuff. These things have to be planned and rolled out, and they seem to go in approximately 2 year periods. They'll work on one task for a couple of years and then they get either reassigned or they repeated the same area. You know, they're given the same task again.
I think that could be do with like the public's memory. You know what I mean? Like after a couple of years, it just seems to be forgotten. You know what I mean? Especially as you're saying, like the 24-hour news cycle where things just coming and coming and coming.
That's the kind of short attention span, isn't it?
Yeah, I heard an interesting interview with Marky Smith, who passed away now, and he was talking about, you know, how he brought out so many albums over the years, and he said to the interviewer, if I'm totally honest, yeah, he said, because he kept changing record labels as well, He said, if I'd have stuck to bringing out one album a year, like the record labels wanted me to do, he said, I would have made millions. I would have made a lot more. He said, because they're geared to bringing out one album a year, promoting you, putting you on the tour, and then you've got another album for the next year. He said, but he was so prolific, he could bring out 2 albums in 1 year, and they didn't like it. So, you know, yeah, you're right. You know, somebody like David Icke, they have to book all the shows in advance and the tour. Yeah, you know, there are other things they have to take into account when they time these things. Yeah.
That's why I find it's one of the things. It's a bit like the classic phrase of Key Bono, you know, as in, you know, I know the phrase means who benefits, but it's really about like follow the money. In contemporary societies, about follow the money. In the same way, you can see similar patternations that can reveal the influence of those kind of groupings. So if a topic comes on the scene and gets supported from multiple avenues, multiple directions, all of a sudden are there with all of it ready, set up. You know, they've got the T-shirts ready to sell, they've got the book ready to sell, they've got the talking point, the hour-long lectures, the blah, all ready to go. Good night, Go. Thanks.
And they've done that a lot with, I mean, things like you mentioned before, Occupy, or I mentioned it, I can't remember, it came in somewhere along the line at some point. That was a similar thing, wasn't it? That's how they fund these things. They're already funded, they're already set up, already organized, the people who are going to be doing what. Because when we turned up, it was all that sit down, stand up bullshit, remember?
Yeah, the Delphi technique shit.
Yeah, and all that.
Compliance.
Yeah.
Compliance exercise.
And we just didn't comply because I don't. It's just, well, I'm all right standing up, thanks. And people going, sit down. I was like, fuck off. I'm standing up. You know, it's like
I'm dancing.
But that's what the whole thing was about. That was back in when 2011 now. It doesn't seem that long ago, but it's a while ago now. But yeah, and everything they do and they've done since, and other events and all that stuff. The Arab Spring all kicked off as well, and
no, Yellow Vests.
Now Yellow Vests are on the streets and doing their thing. But yeah.
Aye. Please make your way to the designated protest area.
Don't forget to purchase your T-shirt in the gift shop on your way.
Yeah.
You always got to go through the gift shop.
But let's just hope there are some, you know, like I say, there is organic growth there, and people are beginning to, you know, see that see the systems for what they are in each country, how they're being oppressed and held back, and you know, this constant tax, slavery, oil, and bullshit, and you know, manufactured crashes and falls in economies and all the rest of it. You know, let's just see it all. I think that's what's happening.
I do think there is. Yeah, that's why for years I've been banging on about the awakening, because these sort of the things like Occupy or now the Yellow Vest stuff comes along, and it's got that kind of production value that means, you know, it's more likely this has got fucking tentacle influences in it, which means it's more likely not going to ever really truly achieve the changes that you're looking for, but it reveals that the energy is there in the first place.
Yeah.
And the fact that over the years there have been multiple, and there still are, and this is going to keep going on, there are multiple individuals and little groups that are naturally, organically emerging to be involved in this kind of stuff. That means the energy is bubbling away there constantly, which is, well, whenever they come along, like it's like a fertile field that you allow to go fallow. You know, you allow it to go wild. All the seeds that were already there will start germinating. You'll get all this burst of energy, different plants growing, different stuff growing. And then the gardener comes along and puts something in deliberately, you know, and it like appropriates that creative energy that is in that field and puts it all into the one plant that the farmer wants to grow. You know, they're using the same kind of I was going to say psychology. It's psychological techniques, but it's more kind of like an ideology, not kind of like it is an ideology that they're applying to us the same as a farmer applies to growing crops. You know?
Aye. They're like appropriating their energy, like you could almost call them useful idiots. You know what I mean? Like carrying out their will unconsciously.
There is the energy of creation there in the first place. And in recent times, that energy, that naturally organic, and I'm using those words a lot tonight, I was trying to stress the point that, you know, I see this happening just out and about in everyday life, not because some big group somewhere decides to put on a protest or whatever. You know, you just listen to what people are talking about and what concerns them in daily life and stuff. Right? The energy is there, like that energy of creation in that field. It's there, it's bubbling away. Given an opportunity or given a situation of crisis, it will emerge, it will start to grow, it will coalesce and become bigger and stronger. But then the farmer comes along and goes, oh, no, that energy is going to be this shape. You know, and they present the idea to the public and then it gets appropriated. But just the fact
bonsai tree.
Yeah, exactly. But it was just the fact, if you bother to look, I feel it's pretty obvious that you could call this the decade of protest. You know, when I was a kid in the 70s, there was stuff going on, but it wasn't like what's going on at the moment. When I was a teenager in the 80s, again, there was stuff going on, but it wasn't like what the fuck's going on at the moment. We are going through major changes. And I know people argue about what changes they want and what they think is fair and good and just and all that kind of stuff, but that doesn't remove the reality that there are major changes going on. Whether you agree with them or not, you know, is another part of the conversation. But
it's a huge conversation, like the changes that are going to take place in society. I think we've touched on it before. Do you know what I mean? Genetics, obviously societal changes, like what you identify with and all that. Genetic changes, like the CRISPR sort of stuff and all that. You know what I mean? The Cas9, all that sort of stuff, with like merging with the robots and all that. You know what I mean? Like the technology. So I seen like there was a fucking. There's an MP today. Sorry, on you go, Peter.
I was going to say the climate as well. Say the climate there's something happening there. We don't know if it's certainly not our fault, but there's something happening.
Even the word climate, you know what I mean? Take that on all different like sort of meanings. You know what I mean? Like I've said it ad nauseum as well. Make America great again. GRATE. Grating societal elements against each other. You know what I mean? This is what it's all about. You know what I mean?
Yeah, creating the friction and exacerbating the conflict so that they can turn into something that will serve an agenda. Typical methodology of the system. So I think maybe I could wrap it up as being, please stop believing in dragons. It sounds, you know, yeah, maybe that's too metaphorical.
Just one more point, just to wrap that up. There was like an MP today, and he was calling for like GCSEs. They're pointless. We should maybe just scrap them. You know what I mean? I was thinking, seeing they roll out full automation and the universal credit, they really will be pointless, man. You'd be as well just handing them fucking participation ribbons or something like that. You know what I mean? Just letting them go to their safe base and be done with it.
And I definitely agree with you, mate. I'd add on to that as well. When I think this is pretty much the direction it's going anyway, as the corporatism, the reality of the corporatism is more accepted by the general populace. The acceptance would also include the training and education being provided by the corporations, not the state. So there'll be this transition more towards what on the surface seems like private education, but it's not, because it's funded and collated by the corporate entity. So they'll decide the curriculum, the content, the education, etc., etc. And that will be because say, for example, take one of the big companies like Apple, you know, big tech company. They want people that know their system, so they will train them in-house. So the concept of things like GCSEs will fade away and instead be replaced by in-house training for those people that are lucky enough to be one of the 10% of organics that are required in the factory.
Or what about like after Elon Musk's Neuralink? Is it Neuralace? After that's implemented, or is it going to be whoever's got the most expensive brain chip is going to be the most intelligent person?
Yeah.
The most powerful person?
Whose family is already high enough up on the wealth tree to be able to pay for their child to have that kind of implant or technology available to them so that they can be in that position. Yes, sir.
Maybe they've already done it.
Yeah.
Who's got the biggest brain?
That's the technological divide starting to emanate. It's already there, basically. You know, the average populace has got access to an average level of technology that is safe to the system. Yeah, you want more than that. You've got to reach this certain wealth bracket that requires you to play the game their way, because otherwise you won't get there. And that's interestingly ironic as well, or indicatively ironic, that most of the people who work in these tech companies do not allow their children to utilize their own technology, as in that they make at their companies. Yeah. And Bill Gates and all that lot restricts the access of their children to technological devices like smart tech, Wi-Fi tech, etc. Why is that? Yeah. Why is it you never see the royals walking around like everybody else with a phone in front of their face like this? Why do you never see them doing that? Yeah, why aren't all the royal children sat there on the balcony doing this like every other kid in the country? Near enough. Yeah. There's a good reasoning for that. Yeah? But anyway, yes, let me wrap it up. I think we've rambled and ranted. I've rambled and ranted enough, so it shouldn't stick the appropriation on you.
Well, we had a little rant.
Yeah, just a little one, just a little rant today, just a moderate rant. Yeah, we'll well, I'm doing it again already. We. I'll claim that label. You know, like you're moderate extremist. I'll be the moderate ranter.
I'll have a bigger rant on Wednesday night.
There's been some interesting news stories over the weekend, and I thought of a few that we could talk about.
Yeah, I know. There's been a couple.
There's quite a few people in the chat, so I'm going to do the thing tonight where I'm not going to go for it, do another show take ages. Thank you for joining in the chat. If you're alleged Altered Edge Media, I keep saying that, alleged me. Altered Edge Media, hello Joseph. I will I'll respond to your message in a minute once we're finished. Sorry, I've been too distracted multitasking on different things, looking at the chat room. I'm still scrolling up the chat room. So I will read back through the chat at some point. Thank you very much for giving us your attention for a couple of hours approximately. And yeah, please stop giving all your power of belief to dragons. But don't give up on the power of creation, because it's in all of us, it's in all of you. And it's that energy that builds the future. So you want a decent future, connect with that energy. Yes, we'll be back Wednesday night with Reality Chat on the Reality Chat channel. We'll talk about news, articles and events of the week and stuff like we do, and just chat in general. Tomorrow night, Racketeer News is on again. I might be joining him with that, I think. I'm not sure. I'll see what Jason wants to do. Saturday night, Steve Tagoose will be on with the mystery show. And Krishna's on Friday and Saturdays regular, and then through the week occasionally as well. He's running open hangouts, so if you want the opportunity to join in on a hangout and have a conversation with people, have your chance to say something, that's what he's offering for you on his channel at the moment. So
cool.
There's not that many people doing that anymore. I personally don't want to do an open hangout. I know there's that many people out there that would love the opportunity to fuck with my shit or fuck with our shit, whatever. I ain't going to give them the opportunity. So, yes. And there's plenty of other stuff going on out there, folks. You know, keep your eyes open. Keep looking, keep talking, keep thinking before they ban it. Thanks again. I'm going to say good night and click the button.
Cheers, Cookie.
Good night.
Cheers.
Let's see.